For our last speaker, we are really honored and excited to have Congresswoman Linda Sánchez joining us. And to introduce her, I'm going to introduce my classmate, Enrico. So Enrico Trevisani is a second-year law student at UCLA. He's also the LLSA inter-org chair, so he helps coordinate events with all of the different affinity organizations on campus. Last summer, Enrico worked with the Texas Civil Rights Project, and among many other accomplishments, he is the co-president of the UCLA mock trial team, which just so happens to be the #1 mock trial team in the country. So Enrico knows what he's doing, and he is here to introduce the Congresswoman. Thanks, Enrico.
Thanks, Katie. I really appreciate those kind words. I definitely don't know what I'm doing, but I'm glad to be here. And I'm very glad to be introducing Congresswoman Linda Sánchez. So Congresswoman Sánchez holds her law degree from UCLA Law. First of all, go Bruins. We're proud to call her an alumna of our law school. And she holds her bachelor's degree from the University of California, Berkeley. The Congresswoman is a former labor lawyer, and she's devoted her career to helping working people get ahead, advocating for working families, improving America's education system, and bringing jobs to Southern California. Representative Sánchez was born in Orange County. She was the 6th of 7 children, born to immigrant parents from Mexico. And she grew up in a proud Latino household. And like myself, and I imagine many others joining us at this conference today, Representative Sánchez's parents inspired her to take advantage of the opportunities that they never had. Prior to her service in the House of Representatives, Representative Sánchez was an attorney practicing appellate law, civil rights, and employment law. And back in 2000, she was elected and served as the executive director of the Orange County Central Labor Council, the AFL-CIO. The Congresswoman currently represents California's 38th Congressional District, and she serves on the House Committee on Ways and Means, where she advocates for the protection of Social Security, Medicare, fairness for U.S. workers and businesses through trade agreements, as well as an even playing field for the middle class through tax code reform. She's the former chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and in the current Congress, she chairs the CHC's Immigration Reform Subtask Force, where she's charged with leading efforts to pass long overdue immigration reform legislation. Representative Sánchez has made history several times in Congress. She and her sister, Loretta, who served in the House from 1997 to 2017, became the first women of any relation to serve together in Congress. She's been the first Latina to serve on the Judiciary and Ways and Means Committee and to be elected as the vice chair of the House Democratic Caucus from 2015 to 2017. Back in 2016, she was elected by her colleagues to serve as the vice chair of the House, the 5th ranking position in House Democratic leadership, making her the first woman of color ever to be elected to a leadership position in the history of the United States Congress. But most of all, Representative Sánchez takes pride in her son, Joaquin, who was born in 2009 and made her only the 8th woman in the history of Congress to give birth while serving as a member. Just a few weeks ago, Representative Sánchez introduced the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021 in the House of Representatives, and this bill would focus on family unity, providing a pathway to citizenship, and recognizing the basic humanity of our immigrant communities. On behalf of the Latinx Law Students Association and our other co-hosts, it is my honor to welcome Congresswoman Linda Sánchez to the For People of Color Conference. Representative Sánchez has agreed to answer a couple of questions after her remarks. So if you think of any question, feel free to use the Q&A function in the chat and we'll select a couple of them for her. Congresswoman Sánchez, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Enrico, for that very kind introduction. And hello to everybody here today. I'm Congresswoman Linda Sánchez, and I'm a proud alumna of the UCLA School of Law. And I can't thank you enough. I feel very honored and very humbled that you asked me to close out this program with you. I do want to start by just thanking the UCLA School of Law and For People of Color, Inc. for this invitation to join you today. And I want to thank all of the UCLA Law students who worked so hard to organize this event. A special thanks to all the students with the Latinx, Black, Native American, Asian Pacific Islanders, South Asian, and Middle Eastern and North African Law Students Association for making this very important day happen. You know, it seems like it was not that long ago when I kind of got this crazy idea in my head to apply to law school. And so for many of you here today, the decision that you're considering applying to law school is sort of the beginning of an exciting new journey. But the decision isn't an easy one. Because we've been conditioned to think of practicing law, like so many other professions, as a white man's domain. And so it's very courageous to think about taking that first step and thinking about entering an area that may be unfamiliar to you, or where you don't see a lot of people that look like you. And that decision is a tough one, and it doesn't get any easier once you get into law school. But I'm here to tell you that that was probably one of the best decisions that I ever made in my life. I learned a lot during my years at UCLA, but more than anything, I think that law school really taught me to persevere and to believe in myself. Because for people like color, and especially I think women of color, naysayers are all too eager to tell us what we are, or more likely what we're not capable of doing. People have very low expectations for us, and they try to dissuade us from doing those things that that may be difficult, but that we're capable of doing. It's a lesson that's imposed on us pretty early in life, and one that we get reminded of over and over again in our careers. Trust me, as a Latina in politics, I know how dismissive some people can be. When I first decided to run for public office, I heard a lot of well-meaning advice that people gave to me, and some cautions. People told me, oh, well, Linda, you know, you're too young to run. I was 33, and you only have to be 25 to run for Congress, but apparently I was too young. They told me that I needed to wait my turn, and I didn't realize that you had to wait in a line in order to run for elected office. Here's a hint: you don't have to wait in line. And one of my favorite pieces of advice that I got from someone, which I think is very, I think a very clear indication of again, those low expectations that people want to continue to set for you. Somebody told me that, you know, Linda, you really ought to run for school board because women care about education. So well-intentioned, but very bad advice. And that advice only made me that much more motivated to prove that I was capable of doing this. So guess what? Here we are. I've been in Congress for almost 20 years now, which I can't believe. I am a member of the powerful Ways and Means Committee. I have chaired the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. And right now I am currently leading the effort in the House of Representatives to finally deliver on immigration reform and provide relief to immigrant communities. But make no mistake, I still have to remind myself to believe in my abilities and to never say never. Every single day, I have to remind myself of that. Even in the halls of Congress, there are people and colleagues who question what I know and why I'm even there. But again, don't ever accept other people's dismissive vision of who you are and what you can achieve. In fact, use that as a motivating factor to change things by proving them wrong. You guys are all going to have to do the same at some point in your life. Whether you're going to be starting law school or a new career path, there are going to be a lot of challenges that lie ahead. And for those of you that are currently students, you're soon going to be tackling the bar exam and the beginning of your legal careers. Wherever you're headed, remember that you have earned your way there. Don't let anybody convince you that it was given to you. You have earned your spot there. You possess skills and you are worthwhile. You have talent and you have ability. You wouldn't have made it to where you are now if you weren't not only just competent, but amazing. Remember that about yourselves, because life can beat you down and you can begin to believe that you're not worthy or you're not worth it. You are amazing every single day. Tell yourself that you are amazing. But, you know, even though you may be amazing and capable, that doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect or that you're always going to make the right decisions. as you move through school or your career, you're going to encounter setbacks and you're going to make mistakes. Life isn't always a straight line to the top. There's always going to be ups and downs in your career, but you have to give yourself the permission to fail. And you have to approach each failure with curiosity, because if you can learn from mistakes that you've made, you're going to grow despite those setbacks. Those setbacks are what make you who you are. Your ability to rebound and bounce back after things don't go your way, or after, something that you were hoping for, would happen to you doesn't happen. A setback doesn't make us a failure. It makes us human. So don't ever get that twisted. You are not a failure. You are a human being who sometimes makes mistakes. But if you can learn from those mistakes, you will grow and you will be stronger. If there's one takeaway that I hope everybody here today leaves with, is that we need you. We need your intelligence. We need your perspective. We need your courage. Because now more than ever, there are far too many small-minded people who want to turn the clock back on the progress that we've made as Americans. And our best defense against that is to be engaged, to stay committed, and to get involved. We need more people of color practicing, writing, and passing our laws. As this nation begins to sort of soul search and look inward on long overdue sort of thought process about race and racism, the need for a truly representative democracy is critical. I'm proud to say that I serve right now in the most diverse Congress that we've ever had in our nation's history, but there is still so much more work to be done. As a woman, I can say this: we make up just over 50% of the population. As women, we only make up 24% of the elected representatives at the federal level. So it's better, but it's still not representative. We need the United States Congress to look like the America that we are elected to represent. And we need, not just members of Congress who are diverse, we need diverse staff who support those members in their offices, because we can't begin to solve massive problems like racial inequality until we're sitting at the table with those who've experienced that reality firsthand. We need people like you to get involved because, again, we need your life experiences and the perspectives that you bring. I represent a district that is ethnically diverse and it's overwhelmingly working class. And I can't tell you how many moms I talk to who are providing for their families on the only paycheck that comes into the household, which is the one that they earn. And I've talked to so many families in my district where even the mom and dad, maybe dual income households, but they're still struggling to get by. And I know of households where teenagers are lifting up generations of family members on paychecks that they collect only after they finish their homework. So each story is different, each perspective is unique. And again, that diversity is exactly what we need to share with the world every day, whether that's at your new job or in your classes at UCLA, or even in the halls of the United States Congress. With so much going on in the world, it's easy sometimes to feel overwhelmed, that the obstacles that are thrown at us are just too difficult to overcome. But remember, we don't do anything alone. Friends, family, mentors can help you get through those hard times. Some of the people who will help you through challenges that you haven't, and these are people that you haven't even met yet. And when something seems too big to accomplish, or you feel yourself losing faith in your own ability, remember that you can do it. You come from generations of ancestors who overcame. Think about that for a moment. You are the product of generations of ancestors who overcame, who had grit, who survived. So believe in yourself, stay committed, and tackle obstacles in bite-sized pieces so that you don't get overwhelmed. In closing, I would just like to say that, the law is a noble profession, and we need noble people from all walks of life to join the legal ranks. So thank you so much again for having me. I wish you all the best of luck, and I look forward to answering some of the questions that you might have today.
Congresswoman Sanchez, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for those inspirational remarks. Particularly what resonated with me is like your advice to not, not necessarily have to wait your turn, whatever that means when you're told that, limiting yourself to other folks' ideas of yourself. It's really great to hear. And I just wanted to say while I have you here that like as the son of immigrants, like thank you for your leadership right now, because I believe that we will see a path to citizenship pass through Congress, and I know that your work will be a key part of that. So thank you. We have a couple of questions from folks in the chat. The first one that we wanted to ask is, how did your law school experience shape your career? And how do any lessons that you've learned that you learned in law school, how does that come into play when you're doing your work as a congresswoman?
Sure. A lot of people ask me, do you have to have a law degree in order to serve in Congress? And the answer is no, because people from all walks of life serve in Congress. There are, former attorneys, former doctors, but there's also former teachers, farmers. I mean, you name it, we have it in the Congress. But I will say that, having a law degree and I did practice law for a short period of time, and having that sort of knowledge and the ability to reason things through has been really helpful in all of my career, in the different careers that I've had, because I've worked in the labor movement and then I worked in Congress. And as a member of Congress, we do a lot that is sort of, it's kind of parallel track to what a trial would be like, but it's not exactly a trial. And the example I'm going to give is we have hearings where we bring witnesses in, experts who have experience in a particular area, and they give their testimony, and then we're allowed to ask them questions. And there's no doubt that the skills that I learned at UCLA in my clinical class have taught me how to question witnesses very effectively, because you can listen to the testimony and the answers that they give to other members, and you can spot inconsistencies in things that they're saying. Because of bilingual training, I know this. And then I know how to word questions to sort of get them to admit that they're either not as knowledgeable as they pretend to be, or that the information that they're giving is not correct. That has been incredibly helpful. And I will say this, as a woman of color, you are grossly underestimated. Everybody underestimates your ability. And so when I was a newer member, very young, a woman of color, and I didn't have much seniority, so I'd be the very last person in the committee to be able to ask questions. And by then the witness is tired, and the witnesses have been asked all the good questions by the more senior members of the committee. And they would probably look at me and think, oh, what's this girl going to ask me? And then I would begin sort of cross-examining them and just leave them, shattered, because I knew how to elicit testimony that was false. And so being underestimated can be a huge advantage if you know how to use it. But those skills in law school come in very handy for the work that I do every day.
Awesome. Thank you. If you have time for another question, another great one we just got in from an attendee is, well, first of all, I'll just read it directly. Thank you for your remarks, Congresswoman Sanchez. I really resonated with them a lot. And my question is, who do you usually confide in when you run into obstacles, when you ran into obstacles as a law student, later on as an attorney, and now as a congresswoman?
Sure. So it was different at each stage of my life. When I was in law school, I had, fellow law students who were friends that we would, vent to each other or help each other out. But I really leaned on my sister Martha a lot in law school when I was feeling frustrated or overwhelmed, or like I was not, getting the material, or I thought I was going to fail my exams or never graduate. She was sort of the repository for my angst and my fear mostly. In my career in the labor movement, I had a mentor, outstanding, wonderful man by the name of Miguel Contreras. He ran the LA Central Labor Council, the LA Fed, and I was sort of new at running the Orange County Central Labor Council, and I would meet with him periodically and ask him for advice and ideas on how to accomplish certain things. And he was an incredible mentor to me. So I sought out sort of that mentorship. And then as a member of Congress, sometimes I ask experts outside of Congress. So, I'll never forget one time I was on a plane and there was a Supreme Court decision that came down while I was on the plane. And when I landed, my phone blew up and my staff said they want to do a press conference about this Supreme Court decision. When you get to the Capitol from the airport, the press conference will start. And so in the car from the airport to the press conference, I called one of my old law school professors at UCLA and asked them to summarize it for me because I didn't have a chance to read it. So I rely on experts when I need to. To vent kind of my frustrations or to help me when I'm doubting my abilities. My husband is a tremendous support network, my family and my friends. And you learn to lean on the people who remind you that you're competent and you're capable and you're amazing, because we forget that. I can't stress enough that don't ever feel like you don't belong because you've earned your place where you are. And I tell myself that when that self-doubt starts to creep up on me in Congress, I have earned my right to be there and to serve.
Thank you so much. And if you have time for one final question, I think we have a few, and I'm sorry to folks whose time questions we weren't able to get to today. But I think if we have time for one more, someone is wondering, how did you go about deciding that you were going to actually make the decision to run? You were going to make that transition from practicing to actually getting in the arena. And what tips would you have for anyone who's considering that?
Sure. Yeah, that's, I will say that I have always been interested in politics and public service. And I worked on some campaigns, a congressional campaign when I was in high school and part of my high school Young Democrats. When I was in college, I was politically active. In law school, I did phone banking for candidates who ran for governor, for different offices. But I never saw myself as somebody who would actually ever run for office or hold office. Because believe it or not, as a child, I was incredibly shy. I was so shy as a child that people didn't think I spoke English because I spoke so little. It was kind of like a fortunate set of circumstances that put me on the path to running. My sister Loretta had run for Congress and she had been successful in 1996. And so like in my mind, just seeing my sister be able to do it, like, seeing that example, like a Latina did this and she was successful and she won, made it that much more real to me that it was something that was obtainable. But I was very happy in my job. I was working for the Labor Council. But in 2000, they did the census. They do the census every 10 years. And because California's population grew, in 2001, when they did the redistricting, we gained a brand new congressional seat. And that was where I lived. I was not interested in running for Congress at the time. As I said, I was working in the Labor Council and I love that work. But then I started to go to community events and see the candidates who were running for that congressional seat to represent me. And honestly, I just wasn't very impressed. And I thought to myself, wow, these are the choices of people that are going to be representing me. Like, I want somebody who's going to advocate for our communities and who's, going to be able to get stuff done and going to be, vocal and not complacent. And sort of the more that I saw the field of candidates and, I was not impressed, I would complain to my husband. And at one point, one day, my husband just looked at me and he said, well, Linda, instead of complaining about it, why don't you do something about it? And I think what he thought was that I would recruit somebody to run, but instead this light bulb went off in my head and I was like, I could run, I know how to run a congressional campaign. I could run for office. I would be better than, and you have to believe this, better than the choices we have now. And I had worked on my sister's campaign as a volunteer coordinator and a field coordinator. I knew what running a congressional campaign meant. I knew that you had to raise money. I knew, how to do the voter contact. So I decided to run. And like I said, I was, basically people patted me on the head and said, well, isn't that cute? And they discouraged me from running. But the advice that I would give folks is if you have an interest in public service, volunteer on a campaign or work on a campaign and gain that experience so that you see what the process is like to run for office. Because there's two parts to holding office. There's the campaign and the running to get yourself in office. And then once you're there, there's the constituent service and the policy that you have to do, to serve your constituents. So if you're interested maybe in public service, I would recommend to people that they volunteer or work on a campaign or intern or work in a legislative office so that you can see what the work is like and whether or not you think that that is something that you might want to do. But those are my two best pieces of advice, along with, don't be afraid to try something. Again, not succeeding doesn't mean you're a failure if you learn something from it.
That is great advice. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Sánchez, again, on behalf of all of the co-hosts of the For People of Color Conference. Thank you so much for being here, giving us some of your time, and for answering some of our questions. It was a pleasure hosting you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, and good luck to everybody. Best of luck.